Hi, welcome back. Today in this video we're going to go ahead and finish up the soda can project. We're going to do the UVs, put it into Photoshop, and then do the nCloth. So for the UVs, I'm not actually going to show you each individual little piece of how I cut the UVs. I'm going to show you the process of how to do it, and at the end I'll show you what my layout looks like and any kind of little touches that I do at the end to kind of line everything up for the UVs before we export them. And then open them up into Photoshop, and then the nCloth piece at the end. So this video hopefully won't be too long, but it will show you the process of how to get it all done. If you missed the first video, you can find it here in my YouTube channel, Paul Fritz Animation. You can go there, check it out. I have a bunch of other videos in there with Unreal Engine and Unity as well, and some other Maya stuff. So again, subscribe to my channel and like it if like the video if you like what you see. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so we left off with our soda can all finished up. We had used these images in the background. We can hide all of these now. They're not necessary for what we're going to work on. And in fact, you could even, if you wanted to, delete these out. But they're not in the way. They're not causing any problems. So I'm just going to leave them in there. All right, so in the object mode, so go right click, go into object mode, so hold down the right mouse button, object mode, and then with it selected in object mode, we're going to open up the UV editor, and our UV editor will pop open, and it depends on how yours is set up. For whatever reason, my tools always seem to be a separate little window that opens up. You can park it next to it just like I did right there, and it is a separate tab. You can also keep it separate. That's a matter of preference of how you like to work. But if we take a look at the UVs, we can see that this is basically your standard UV for a cylinder. So let's go ahead and it's not really going to change anything, but with it set as a cylinder, let's go ahead and first things first, with it selected, let's go up to Edit, Delete by Type, History, and then let's go ahead and modify, and we're going to freeze the transformations because you can see over here, right now my translate Y is at this position, and here's my X and Y and Z scale from where we adjusted the can. When I freeze the transformations, it zeroes everything out and sets these back to 1. But at this point it doesn't really change much with my UVs, and that's because I haven't done anything with them yet. This is just kind of the standard viewport when you first open it up. Now with let's go ahead and go to UV shell. So right click and hold, select UV shell, and you have to be in the UV editor for that to work. I'm going to select the UV shells. I'm going to go up to create, and I'm going to select automatic. And it's going to bust everything out for me, and does a pretty decent job. But I'm going to go in and I'm going to adjust these. And the reason is because when we put it into Photoshop, I want certain things to happen, and I also don't want all these number of seams. So everywhere that there's a cut right here, there are going to be seams. I don't want these seams along the side to be quite so obvious. And also this tapering effect up here. When we take a look at the way it kind of folds out, so if you push this button right here, it kind of shows how stretching and sort of warping of your UVs might be. The white is none. Blues, it gets to be a little bit and scales up into pink and then red for significant. And if we take a look, you can see right along these edges here, we have a little bit of that happening. What I want to do is I want to grab the right button here. Okay. What I want to do is I want to square these off. I want to connect it so there's only one cut in the actual main body of the can. And when we take a look at it, that would be this area over here. Okay. You can see I have a bunch of these cuts here, and you can see it kind of when I hover over them. The other thing that it did is this weird kind of cut down here along the bottom. Some points it's all one piece. Other points it kind of cut them out like that. And along the top, I want to actually be able to put some script in here, and I don't necessarily want to have to worry about these lining up with each other the way it's set up here. I do want to keep these as a big circle like this, and the same with those rims there. Now these are going to end up with a material on them. These are going to end up with an image, so the soda can top that I have a picture of. We're We're going to put that on there. We're going to create our own texture for the side to give our own image there. It's going to go down here to the very edge, and then if you remember on the soda can, this part down here is silver, so it's metallic, along with the bottom of the piece down here. And we may need to come in and do some adjustments for that. All right, so kind of talking through that, and just to remember, I'm going to go ahead and go through the process of how we cut things and how we stitch things back together real quick, and then I'm going to pause my video and go from there. But like I said, what I want to do is I'm going to go to edge, and I want to cut so that kind of right here where it starts to do this taper on the can up towards the top, I want to cut this right along the top here so I can kind of square this section out, and I also want to reconnect these seams. I'm also going to cut it down along here to separate the, and probably right here where it starts to taper down. I'm going to cut that. This is going to be metallic down here, so it's going to be two different materials. So I'm going to use that point to kind of help me cut this right along here. And even though it, right down here at the bottom of this taper, where the taper is right there, what I think I want to do, I think I want to move it up, but maybe it stays right there. Let me grab that can real quick. So I'm going to pause and let's take a look at the way the can actually has things set up on it. Okay, so I'm back with the can, and if we take a look at the very edge of it here, we can see that the paint kind of stops right here, and then it starts to go metal, and then we got that curve where it starts down to that taper right down here. So if you kind of take a look at that, and here I'm showing you something that you can't even see. So let's try that again. Okay, sorry about that. So if we take a look at the bottom of the can right here, we can kind of see this taper starts right here, the metallic, but the paint actually stops just above that. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to kind of copy that whole thing so that the paint just stops right there. So what that means for us is if we take a look down here along the bottom, that point I think is really right above where the automatic cut has already occurred for us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click right here, and when I do that, you see I get this circle all the way around, and then using my UV tools, I'm just going to cut that. Okay, so I'm going to hit the cut. Now that is cut right along there. That means these pieces here I'm going to end up stitching back together. So I'll show you how to do that real quick here in a second. What I want to do first is I'm going to come up here, and right along the top, the paint actually goes all the way to the very top, but I'm going to cut it right here to give me this nice square kind of effect. It's actually going to be a long rectangle right here at the beginning of this taper to kind of, and actually right here I think. So we're going to cut it there as well. If you hit G on your keyboard, because the last command we used was cut, if you hit G, it'll repeat the last command. You can see that right there. It cut that for me. Okay. So that's kind of got me started. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to start kind of putting these pieces together and figuring out where my seam is actually going to be placed. So the last cut there, and that should be probably this edge right here. If I take a look at my UV editor right here, if I hover over this section right here, you can see that that's where that seam is right there. I'm going to keep that seam and that one right there, so I'm not going to stitch that one together. But again, a real easy way to stitch these is just click on the top one, go down to the bottom where you want, hold your shift key and double click on that bottom one, and it'll connect all those together. And then I'm just going to go ahead and use the, let's see if this actually works right. If I do stitch together, it should move that piece of the can over and pop it right next to it. You can see now we have this nice straight piece, and we've got this weird kind of taper happening right there, so that tells me I probably wanted to go just a little bit further down because I didn't want to have any stretching effect right in here, and right here is kind of where that last square happens right there. So I'm going to go ahead and undo what I just did. Control Z, undo that cut, and then Control Z one more time to undo these cut up here. A couple more times. There we go. There we go. I actually want to cut it right along here. Go ahead and cut it. Now I'm going to do that stitch. Hold the shift key, stitch it together, and I'm going to stitch it together. And when I do that, it's better. It may not be 100% square, and when we go to straighten the UV, we'll see how that looks. Okay, we'll see what we end up with. And we still have this other piece kind of laying over the top of it here, so that's going to cause some issues with the way what we're seeing. All right, the other thing about stitching these together and this piece down here, so, and up here, so the ends of the can where we have the taper. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set these up so that there are 4 cuts along here. Along this one, I'm not going to have all those same cuts. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to finish putting this back together. And I'm going to stitch that back together. And then this is the last one, because there are only 4 pieces. Hopefully it should be the last one. Okay, and then stitch that together. So now the can should mostly be together. It should all be together. Okay. And we do have some of this stretching still occurring in there, but when we go to unfold it, it should fix that. But let's go ahead and just double check real quick. I'm going to go to UV shells. I'm going to select this W. I'm going to pull it out of the way. You can see the rest of my can is all kind of up there. And then what I want to do is kind of unfold this section here. Let's see what happens. And now it should get rid of all that redness that was in here, all the pink and the funny blues. So now it should be nice and straight. Now it is, when it straightened it, it did make it a little crooked here. So I can just go ahead and straighten this out a little bit. Okay. And I may have just clicked the wrong button. I'll pause this for a second. Okay, and then after we go ahead and straighten that UV, that's kind of get that all set up for us. So the next thing we want to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about getting these pieces right here. We're going to put them together so that they're 3 pieces, maybe 4. Right now it's set up kind of that way, but I also need to fix these pieces down here and make it the same way. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and cut these into 4 pieces so that they will work out a little bit better, be a little bit less stress on them. And then I'll start working on these pieces as well. So I'm going to go ahead and pause and then unpause after I get some of these different pieces together, show you what I did, and then pause. We'll kind of go back and forth like that. I think that might be the better way of doing this. So I'm going to go ahead and pause right now. Okay, so I'm not done putting everything together yet. I'm still in the process, but one thing I wanted to show you here is this might be something that you run into, and it probably has something to do with the way we deformed the can as we started to reshape everything. This point right here, I have 2 edges, okay? And no matter what I do, they won't seem to stitch together. All right, so, and I thought maybe it might be vertices, but when you go to vertices, one of the things you can check is, you know, when you click on a vertice with the move, you can kind of pull it around a little bit and see if there's some separation, which means that you have 2 vertices occupying the same space, but they're not connected, so you have this kind of a break between 2 lines. Think of it as 2 parallel lines laying right on top of each other. That's not the case with this either. Sometimes that causes this effect, and you simply merge the vertices together, and that would fix it. But this is more, I believe, because of the angular geometry. Why it's not doing it to the rest of the can, I don't know. We could go through the process of trying to do a cleanup, but what it would probably do is it would probably put a cut across here or through the can or something. We don't want that. We're trying to do something else with this. So One quick fix, it's going to kind of affect the geometry just a little bit, but it's on a very small section of the can. It's not going to be seen. So in this case, just to move past this and get our UVs cleaned up, what I would do is I would right click, go to face, select that face, delete it, and then go to my edge and select it, and then just bridge it. And that's going to fix that. Now you can see visibly that this is a flat surface and these are a little bit more of a kind of a slight curve to them. And that's very possibly what was creating this effect for us. And we're just going to go ahead and leave that alone and not mess with it anymore. Now the rest of this I'm going to put together. One thing you might notice is as you start to try to stitch these together, you might end up with some lines that you can't stitch together. And what would happen is like right here. So if I do these real quick, stitch those together. If I try to stitch this one together, sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. But if you stitch the perpendicular lines together, it will get rid of that section as well. So anyway, those are just some real quick things I've noticed about this that I wanted to talk about. The other thing that I'm not going to do is if we zoom in really close down here, this edge all the way around, I'm going to leave that edge there. But I'm going to put the rest of these together, and I will probably cut this at another point somewhere as the taper starts to kind of go the other direction, probably in this area right here, to make it so I can lay all this out a little bit better. But I'll talk about that a little bit more once I resume the video. So I'm going to go ahead and pause again. Okay, so now I've got everything kind of stitched back together down here on that bottom piece the way I want it. And I decided to just leave these at the top. I'm going to cut these into 4 anyway. And right now I've got 2 that are equal size, and I've got 2 that are equal size this direction. I'm not going to really get into the details of just go ahead and cut these to make them even. I don't think that's necessary. When I do, what I am going to do is I'm going to put some script on at least one of these, and I'll do it on the longer ones since that gives me a little bit more room to work anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and just leave them the way they are. And then let's talk about the UV real quick. When we did that, so these are those top pieces. And I can go ahead and just pull that up here, select these. Maybe. Just kind of move them over here out of the way. This bottom piece down here, that's the piece that we did this with. And now because we put it all together, except I missed a piece right there, it looks like. Go ahead and just stitch it all together just to really mess it all up completely. Alright, so what I want to do is I want to cut this into 4 pieces, fairly equal. They don't have to be perfect. Again, this is just going to receive a metallic material anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and select it there, and I'm going to go ahead and make these cuts all at the same time, and then I'm going to put this round cut around the bottom as well. So just show this review real quick, and then I'm going to pause again. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure I zoom in and get it right to that very edge where I have this all cut already. I just left that original cut there. And I'm just going to go ahead and cut that. And then, like I said, they don't have to be perfect, but I'm just going to get them as close to each other as possible. So kind of right in this area right here. That's where it's going to be. Just going to click that real quick. Make sure I get at the very edge. So zooming in, zooming out, all those type of things. So right there. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut that. I'm going to do it 2 more times. So I'm going to pause. Well, before I do that, let me go ahead and just put this other cut in right here. I'm going to put this right across this section right here. I'm going to double click. I'm going to cut that there. And now I'm going to go ahead and cut these other 2, but you don't need to see me do that. I'm just going to go ahead and pause real quick and then come back with that finished up. Okay, so now I've got them cut up basically into 4. They're close. You can see they're not perfectly set up, but that's okay. Again, this is just going to receive one material on it. I'm going to go to UV shell. I'm going to do a marquee select of that piece to select all of those pieces there. And not want to do that. And my toolkit says, this thing's a pain. All right, so with it selected, I'm going to just go ahead and unfold it. And it should come out something like that. I think they're a little bit scaled, is off a little bit. But we're going to go ahead and align these a little bit later to make sure everything stays in the same scale. All right, so that's done. I'm going to do the same thing with these. I'm going to marquee select those, and I want to unfold those so that they get that little curve that's in them. And as we start to get things set up, that's going to be kind of important in Photoshop. Now, the rest of these pieces are those circular pieces and the straight pieces that are around here. Because they're metallic, we don't necessarily have to do this. We're just going to get one material on it. But you can see that it did some funky stuff on the way it cut it up along the edge there. For whatever reason, it decided it needed to do this. It may help with leaving it a little bit. What I would normally do is I would, if I was going to make this a high detail area that was going to get multiple different materials on it or textures, I would go in so I can control that a little bit better and try to set these up so that they're perfect. But I am going to leave them exactly the way they are. They're already kind of broken out, and they have been set up in here. So I hover over, you can see down there in the UV section down here that these are all kind of broken up into those smaller pieces, both on the top and the bottom. The texture that this is going to get is actually going to be in this piece right here. What I do want to make sure though is that it goes all the way to the edge, because that texture is going to cover this whole thing. And then the rest of this is also going to get that material, that metal material, so aluminum material, aluminum looking material. So I'm okay with the way these are set up. I could come in and cut them all up, but that's going to, take many minutes of time to do that. And since it's not going to really affect the way it looks this way, as long as they're alleviated, so we don't have all that funny thing going on with the stretching of the material. And we can take a look at that. If I click this little button again right here and see what that looks like on my UVs, you can see that these look really nice. They're nice and white. There is a little bit of pink around the outer side here of that one, and that is actually the bottom of the can. So this is the top right here, and that's going to be okay. So I'm going to leave those the way they are. And what I do want to do is I want to lay these out. And I'll probably come back and modify it a little bit, but let's just see what the automatic layout does. So if I go into my UV shell, hit Q to quit that move tool for right now. I'm going to select everything. And what I want to do is go into modify, and let's see, right here at layout, I'm going to select the little square there for the option box and bring this up. And we can change our packing resolution, the type of unfold we want to do. So I'm going to keep this at unfold 3D. I'm not going to fix my non-manifold geometry for this because it should be okay. Packing resolution set at 256 right now. I think I want to change this to 2048, like down here. So I'm going to change it to 2048 up here. I'll leave the iterations at 1. Shell pre-rotation, leave that off. Scaling, preserve the 3D ratios. Want to preserve the 3D ratios, translate the shells. We're going to set this at pixels. We're going to give ourselves some shell padding. Let's see. Go ahead and put this at 0.15 right there. 0.15 right there. And tile padding at 1. It's Scale model. Okay, we're going to leave all that alone. And we're going to go ahead and click Layout UVs. And it's going to lay it all out for us. And everything should be of the right scale. But let's go ahead and double check. What we're going to do is we're going to turn on or turn off the little stretching tool right there. And we're going to click on our checkerboard. And we're going to take a look and see how our checkerboard looks for scale on our can here. Okay. And looking like we did pretty good with the scale. I don't see any weird things happening here on the edges for warping. Okay. Now what I am going to do is I'm probably going to come in and I'm going to play around with the squares here and try to get them so they're a little bit more straight. You know, kind of like this one right here is fairly straight. I want to kind of look like this. So I'm going to do the best I can with these because remember on our UV editor here, they are curved objects. And they're fairly straight, but you can see they're kind of off kilter here a little bit. So that's going to require me to kind of shift some things around, and these are kind of sideways, kind of laying around like this. I'm going to try to get everything kind of laid in nice and flat. So I'm going to pause this video to do that. You know, this it really helps with laying out your textures when you're doing your textures if you can kind of see how everything is laid out and know what the tops and bottoms are. So as you start to put things in like text. So a way to do that, I'm going to point that out real quick before I pause this video again, is if I click on these edges here, and what I'm looking for is where the bottom, so this is the bottom right here of that UV in relation to the object in my scene here. And I can do the same thing with this next one. If I hit W on my keyboard, it kind of helps highlight things so I can see the middle point. And you can see that this one's upside down. See, this one is, the bottom is there on the top side. So by having these flipped around backwards and upside down from each other and sideways, when you start to put these into your texture in something like Photoshop, it's doable. You just got to remember which way the angles that they're pointing and stuff like that. But if you can make your life a little bit easier by orientating your UVs in a direction that makes sense to you as you're kind of approaching it, it makes things go a little bit faster, a little bit smoother. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and rearrange everything, get them so that they're facing up and down the way they should be. And that's going to cause me to have to kind of relay some things out. I may even have to rescale everything just a little bit. If you do rescale, make sure you select everything and you scale it all together so that it maintains that scale that they have. If you just move one thing, if you rescale this large area, it's going to be off from the scale of the rest of your UVs here. So you got to make sure you scale them all together. All right, I'm going to pause. Okay, so I did end up scaling them down just a little bit, and then I got everything realigned so that this is the top part of the can that's going to get some coloring, some texture. This is also the side of the can that's going to get texture. This is the top of the can that'll have some texture. These will get materials assigned to them because these are going to be a metallic material, and the same with these pieces here, along with these pieces here. So it's kind of organized to make sense. I have them so that this, I know which side's the top and the bottom. These weren't quite so critical because we're going to get all the material on them, but just kind of a blanket material. But then again, if you did want to put something like, you know, come back in later on, you wanted to add some damage to them or maybe something down to it, having them organized in a way that makes sense would be helpful. But again, you can always work around that. So now it's all set up, and what we want to do is we want to select it all. So in the UV shell mode, do a marquee select it all. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and take a picture of it to export it. So right here, this little UV snapshot, the little camera, I'm going to click on that. Because I have my project set, remember we set it at the very beginning, and anytime you close and open it, if you're working on other things, you need to reset your project. So go up to File, and then go down to Set Project. Anyway, so here's where it's going to go. It's going to go to my images, and this will be called Out UV. I I think I'm going to change it from out UV to soda can UV. Right now it's set up as a Maya IFF. We don't want to do that. We want to go ahead and change it to something that we can use inside of Photoshop. IFF might work, I don't know. But anyway, I usually use a JPEG or PNG. Typically I use PNG, so I'm going to go ahead and select that. My output size, I'm going to go ahead and leave it at 2048, 2048. You can change it if you want. Just make sure you're going on increments that are going to be used. Anyway, 4096 and things like that. Okay, so the outer edges, I usually change this. It's white. Now, if you're going to set Photoshop up to have, or whatever you're using, GIMP or whatever, the background, if it's white, obviously you're not going to see these edges. So you need to pick a different color. If you're going to change the background of your Photoshop background to a different color, then white will work, of course. If you can change to black, obviously black won't. But I usually use a bright color just to make it stand out on whatever I end up using. And then that's pretty much it. I'm going to go ahead and say apply and close. And if I go into my folder here and into this project, and then it was in my images, there it is right there. That's what we're going to end up using in Photoshop. So I'm going to pause real quick. I'm going to get Photoshop opened up, and then we'll go into the process of getting this into Photoshop and start doing some texturing in Photoshop. Okay, so I've got Photoshop open now, and basically this is my Photoshop. It's opened up. You can use GIMP or whatever similar type program to do something like this. Although I've never used GIMP, so I'm not going to walk through that process. But what we want to do is we want to start a new project, and I'm going to leave my Maya open in the background so that I can maybe come back and refer to the model or the UVs if I forget what is what when I have it laid out. So that will help me more quickly be able to go back and forth. All right, so what we want to do is we want to create new. Okay, and when we create a new one, we end up with this whole setup right here. And what we want to do is we want to give it a title. So this is going to be my, wow, let's type here. Let me move this out of my way so I can do that. And I'll just call this demo. All right. We want to change our width and our height. Remember when we exported it from Maya, we selected 2048 by 2048. If you selected something different, like for 4096 or something like that, that's what you're going to put in here. But this is 2048 because that's what I had, and it's pixels, and it's 2048. Okay, and I'm going to leave my resolution at 700. You can leave it at whatever you have it. And this is where you can change your background content. Mine's set to black right now. I'm just going to leave it that way. You can, I think it's defaulted to white, and there's also some other ones you can pick, but I'm just going to leave it on black. Once I have this all done, I give it a name. I changed the height and width in pixels to 2048 by 2048. Make sure you change it to pixels because it may be set in inches. So we go ahead and hit create. And now I've got this area to work with. What I'm going to do is I'm going to not pull up Maya. That's not what I wanted. I wanted my file folder. There we go. All right, so my file folder right here is the UV I set up. I'm going to click, drag, and drop that into here. And now I have this all set up for my soda can. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. Once you have this set up, don't move it. This piece right here, you should not change at all because this is how your UVs are. And we put those images back in. Basically, this is a template. This template is what we're going to use to design the texture that we're going to put onto our can inside of Maya. So over here on the right hand side, I'm going to lock this. Actually, I'm just going to click on it, select the little lock, and I'm going to lock it so I can't move this. This won't allow me to move it anymore. And we're going to work in layers. That's one of the reasons why we're using things like Photoshop for this particular project, is so we can layer it. Okay. So now I want to add a new layer. Okay, and this is what we're going to make some of our changes on. And the first thing I think I want to do is just kind of decide on a color for the basic coloring of the can. And because I'm just going to, this is kind of a real quick tutorial for the Photoshop piece of it, just to kind of get you into doing this. And most of this is actually going to be done using material for the can metal. So all these pieces here, we're going to use a assigned material. We're not going to put anything on those. For this center piece right here, we're going to use that image of the top of a soda can. And then this is going to be whatever colors and design you want to create. In the intro, I use kind of a bluish color. I think what I want to do instead is change it to a different color. I'm going to select right now text is selected. I'm going to just select the move button real quick while I kind of talk about this. So for my colors, and you can put multiple colors in here. You can make this however wild and crazy you want to do it. I am just going to show you the process instead of making you sit here watching me get all creative. I'm just going to show you how to use Photoshop to do this, and then let you get creative and spend as much time as you want on that. So right here, the color palette, for those of you that are not familiar with Photoshop, hopefully this is not your first time using Photoshop, but if it is, this will be enough to kind of get you started a little bit. But you click on that new color palette, and you can see if I wander off of the color palette, I have this little eyedropper, and I can select other images or colors that might be in the scene, and that's what it's going to change to. So say if I pick this purple color here, it's going to kind of change it to that purple color. And actually I missed it, so let's try that again. There we go. So it's going to change it to that purple color. You can see that right here is new. This is what it was. I think what I want to do, instead of using that purple, I think I'm going to make this can kind of something like a bright yellow maybe. And then once I kind of select the general area, you can kind of pick around in here until I can move it around, and you can see I can change the color palette. There we go. So I'm going to start with bright yellow, and I'm going to say OK. And what I want to do is I'm going to use my paintbrush, which is the paintbrush tool here. So here on the left-hand side are all of your different tools. There are so many. I'm not going to get into all of them or talk about each of them, but again, there's an eyedropper to be able to do a color select. And this is your paintbrush right here. If you hold it down here on the little arrow, you'll see you get different types of tools pop up, a pencil and things like that. So I'm going to just select the paintbrush. Up here at the top, if I hover over, you can see how large my circle is. That's my paintbrush area. And then there are some various settings up here on the top. This right here, if you hit the little down arrow, this is where your size for that is. You can also select how basically how full or how much color is going to go into it. So it's called hardness, but if it was at a lower number, it would be more kind of a feathered approach to the painting. It'd be like a light kind of a brush. You can kind of see that example right here. You can also select different types of brushes. I'm just going to use the generic basic brush for this. Like I said, this is not really a Photoshop class per se. It's more of a class just to kind of get you introduced into it enough to be able to do this project. Alright, so with this selected, and my scale right here is kind of large, and it's kind of like, coloring in a coloring book. You want to stay within the lines as long as if there's something else on the other side of the line that you don't want to get painted. If you go outside the lines and it's kind of this empty black area, it's not going to affect your UVs at all. It's not going to affect your model at all. So this right here is going to be all the same color, and since I picked this yellow, if I just start to paint in here, you can kind of see that I can't really see my lines anymore as I start to paint over the top of it. It's getting kind of covered. So what I want to do is this layer right here, I'm going to pull it down and put it underneath my soda can layer. Now you can see there are my graphs of my UVs. So now if I paint, I can see where I'm painting. And I'm just going to kind of do the outline real quick here. and paint these as well. Okay, and you can see that it's all one color, it's all yellow. Now if I wanted to, I could come in here and I can, you know, paint the can differently. I can change the style of brush so that the way I apply the paint is a little bit more straight. A bunch of different things you can do. I'm not really going to get into that so much, as I'm just trying, like I said, trying to show you the general introduction to this. So we've got that done, but the next thing I said was we're going to go ahead and we're also going to use a photo image to kind of change up the can a little bit for the top of the can. So what I want to do is I want to find that, and that is in my, again, it's in my projects here, right? So if I go back to my project folder, down here in source images, there's the top of that soda can. I'm going to use that image right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just click, and I'm actually going to add another layer. I'm going to add it to this. So first what I'm going to do, slide that over, add another layer down here. Okay, and if we want to name these, we can double click in here. This will be my can paint color. I'm going to hit another layer in here, and this layer is going to be the can top. Okay, and that can top with it selected right here, I'm just going to go ahead and click, drag, drop it into here, and then while it's still in this X mode, like it's not been set yet, I can go ahead and start to modify this a little bit. And because it's underneath my soda can UV, I can see that I can see the graph here. What I'm going to try to do is I want to scale it so that this part of the can is going to fit inside this inner part of this UV. Right now I have the outer part, which is going to be material, and then this inner part, which is going to be this textured image right here. So what I want to do is I want to kind of focus in on this. So if I hit Control plus on my keyboard, I can scale in. If I hit Control minus, I can scale out. Okay, so plus and minus. You can also do that, it takes a lot longer, but you can do that up here under one of these. I wish which one it is. I think it's window. And I think there's a zoom function in here. Up in one of these windows. I never use it from up there. Usually typically use it down here. Okay, so I'm going to scale this down, move it, and you can see that I'm using the move tool, so kind of right in here, this would be the move tool. If I use my mouse, I can scroll up and down and then left to right here. Help me center this a little bit. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. You can see what I'm doing. A little bit better. All right, so let me see. Now I lost the ability to select the can. Let's see here. Got too small. Zoom out just a little bit. And okay, so again, even I'm getting mixed up a little bit here. What I want to do is I want to get the center of the can, so kind of right here where the little pop-top thing is, and I want this section here to line up with this outer section there. So I need to scale this image back up some more. If this takes too long, I'm going to pause so that you don't have to sit here watching me fight with this thing the whole time. I think you can kind of get the idea of what I'm trying to do. All right, I'm getting close, but I'm going to pause for a minute to go ahead and finish this up, and then I'll show you how it looks. Okay, so you kind of get the idea here. I've scaled it up, so now that this inner circle here where all this webbing kind of is, I've got this scaled up so that it's covered up in all this and it's centered. We do have a little bit of shadowing here that's going to kind of cause a little bit of an effect on the can, but again, it shouldn't be grossly obvious, I hope. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to just erase everything I don't need, because you can see that it's kind of overlapping some of the rest of these UVs out here, and we don't want it to be in those. So what we're going to do is right over here on the left-hand side, there's this eraser right down here. Here's the brush we're using. Here's the eraser. And there we go. So it's going to tell me I can't do that because it hasn't been rasterized. So basically it hasn't been set as a, right now it's a smart object. We want to rasterize it so that we can erase it. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So when I click on that, now because it's its own layer, it's not going to affect any of the other layers that I already have on here. What I can do is I can go ahead and erase it, just like this. All right, so I am going to go ahead and erase it all the way up to the very edge of this one down here, so that this outer circle that I have here is supposed to receive a texture material on it instead of this image. So I'm going to go ahead and just do that as I move around. Just be careful not to move too far down in this area down here. Okay, so I'm going to pause again, get this all cleaned up. You get the general idea. You don't need to sit here and watch me do this, right? So I'm going to go ahead and pause it. Okay, I'm back, and as you can see, we've got this all erased around the outer side. I have a little bit here between this two rings, and that's okay because, again, we just wanted it not to take up this outer ring here and just be here in this area here, this in-between area, which is black. There are no surfaces that are going to be colored from that, so this will be okay. So the next thing I'm going to show you how to do real quick is put some text in this. So I'm going to hit Control W, Control minus rather. Maybe, oh, helps to click on the program. There we go. Control minus. And what I'm going to do is kind of center this area here. And I'm going to put some text in here. And we can do that by simply clicking on the text button. And what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add that to a new layer too. So I'm going to go ahead and it may actually add itself to its own layer. Let's see real quick. So if I select the text tool and I start to click, it does. It gives me my own new text layer right here. And I'm going to type in something like we can't see it very well, can we? So let's see here. Let's see what we got going on here. Over here on our text, over on the side, the reason why we can't see it is because our text has decided it's going to pick yellow as the color. So let's go ahead and change that. Could be because that's the color I had it set at last time for whatever project I was working on. So let's change it to something that might stand out a little bit better. Maybe like a red. Push this all the way up. Nice bright red. Say OK. Go ahead and highlight that actually. Try that again. All right, so Fritz soda. Let's do something like like that, okay? And we can go ahead and change the font scale, and we can change the different fonts over here. If you scroll up a little bit, you can see right in here we have it set at 9 right now. You know, pick something larger maybe. See what that does. Once we get this kind of set up, then we can center it as well. Right now we have it with that. I don't know, some different different text, and we probably want to shrink this down a little bit then because that's going to be way too big. Okay, let's see what that looks like. Click on the here. And let's see here. I should be able to move it. Actually, I need to select the move tool. Let's try that. There we go. Now I can move it. So the move tool right up here at the top. Okay. And let's see here. Let's go ahead and go up here to, if we select it and hit Control T, that brings up the transform again, and now you can see that I can actually rotate it. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to rotate it a little bit. I can also move it this way as well. Okay, and kind of, I mean, because this is round, wherever I put it, it doesn't really matter. But I do want to stay away from the seams, so we're going to stay away from the seams there. And now maybe I'm going to add another text down here. So once that's set, I'm going to hit Enter. And pick another text again, come down here. Everything's going to be the same as it's set up here. I'm going to change the font though to just a little bit smaller. Actually put that back. I'm still selected in this text, so it's going to affect this text here. I'm going to add a new layer. And this is going to have text in it on this layer. Again, there we go. All right, so all right, we're editing this one instead. Let's try that. There we go. Okay, so we need to click off away from there. My bad. I was actually selecting the kept selecting the other layer. We gotta be careful not to do that. And I can go ahead and change this. I'm going to change the font size, like I said before. Okay. And once that's done, click back here, select the Move tool. And I think I'm just going to put it something like this. Okay, so a couple texts there, and now maybe one more text put up here. So let's go ahead and add another layer. And I think this longer one right here is where I want to put it. And let's see here, another text box right here. Click into this, and I'm going to drop this font down pretty small. All right. Okay. Select the Move tool, move it into here. Now, if I were to just put it on there just like this, what's going to happen is this is going to kind of be warped onto the side of the can. I want it to actually look like it is supposed to be there, so it's like straight. We could certainly go for a warped look on it. But what I want to do instead is I want to try to do an effect on this. Okay, so what we're wanting to do is we actually want to warp this. So the first thing we need to do is we need to take this object. So we're going to select it. Make sure you click up here and select it. And then we want to go up to Layer. And we want to go down and let's see, we want to go to Smart Objects, and we want to convert to a smart object. And once we do that, we have it selected. It should be a smart object now, and let's make sure we got the right thing selected. Let's try that again. Select it, Layer, smart object, convert to smart object. And now if we go to edit, we go to transform, we should have the warp selection highlighted here. I'm going to select warp, okay? And we could just grab these individual ones and kind of work it around, but nice up here at the top, you can see we have the warp tool highlighted there. What I want to do is I want to go to custom, and I'm going to select arc. When it does that, it gives us this arc, and there's another setting that we could have just done this arc in, but it wouldn't necessarily have worked the way we wanted to. But with this one, it has this dot right here that allows us to kind of adjust the way it's going to shape. What I want to do is I want to try to get this to kind of mimic the arc that is here in this segment right here of our UV. And kind of play around with it a little bit. I think that's close, but I think I need to also adjust the angle of this as well. So once that's done, I'm going to hit enter. It should set it. And then if I go into Control T, select that, Control T for that, now I should be able to rotate just a little bit and kind of try to get this to line up the way I want it to. I'm using the UV kind of as alignment, so here on the outer edge and here I am touching those points. I hit enter. I think that's going to come out pretty good. Alright, so now we've got some color on our cans, we've got an image here in our UV, and we've got all of this saved up here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save this. It's going to ask me what I want to save it as and where I want to save it. I'm going to save it on my computer, and I'm just going to go ahead and put this right into my project just so I have it for later on if I need to come back and refer to it. So let me go ahead and find my project. Too many things in here. And I'm just going to put this right here in images. I'm going to save this Photoshop project right there. Okay. It's going to ask me, I'm going to say okay, and now it's saved. Next thing I want to do is I'm going to do this as an export. So I'm going to go up to File, Export. I'm going to do a quick PNG export. It's going to ask me where I want to put it. And I actually want to put it into my project, but I'm going to put it down here in my source images. And I'm just going to call this my soda can texture. Okay. And now with that done, I'm going to go ahead and minimize this for a second. Go back to my project. Close these UVs out. And with my can, I'm going to go ahead and actually I'm going to go back in. I'm sorry, close my UVs. I didn't want to do that because we're actually going to use our UVs to select the material or the surface area that we want to apply this texture to. So I know I want to apply it to that. So let me go ahead and make sure I'm in UV shell. Select those, and then also this can top right here. So these are the areas that we've actually created texture for. Now with that done, they're selected here. I'm going to right click. I'm going to go down to the bottom and assign a new material. And this will come up. I'm going to select Arnold for this, AI standard surface. And now I've got a new material assigned to that. All right. And what I want to do is I want to find it. Over here, it didn't necessarily, sometimes it opens up for you, sometimes it doesn't. I'm going to right click. And I'm going to go down to my AI standard surface that I just created. Select that. And for this name, I'm going to highlight it. And I'm going to call this M underscore. And I'll just call this soda can. Main. Okay. For the main, this is going to be the main texture. Main material for it. We hit enter. Highlight that, Control C, and then for the output, I'm going to do that same thing right here. And paste that there, hit enter. I'm going to go back to the main one here that doesn't have the one next to it. And then right here for the base, where it says color, I'm going to select this. by hitting that little flag there, and this is going to come up. I'm going to select File, and the image I'm going to select, I'm going to hit the little folder there, and I want to find my soda can texture, which is this one right here, and I'm going to say Open. And now if I hit 6 on my keyboard, I should have those textures applied. Go back to object mode. There we go. There's the top. And I can see that I made a big error already. If I take a look, you see this grid right here. So one thing I did not do was I didn't turn off the grid from my Photoshop. So I go back to Photoshop right here. I can see that all that purple grid is still on here, and of course it's on top of everything. So the way to fix this is I'm just going to go ahead and hit that little image for my soda can UV and hide all of that. And now what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and export this. Again, export as a quick PNG. I'm going to leave it the same name. So I'm going to click on that because I want to overwrite it. I'm going to say save, and I'm going to say yes. Okay. And by doing that, because they're linked, because we already have that UV set up in here, it's going to automatically update the UV for me. Okay. So now all of those purple grids are gone. This is the can with all of that applied to it. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to apply the material that we're going to use for this, and that's going to go ahead and finish up getting the can ready for all of that, but we still need our UVs open. I'm going to go ahead and leave this open. Photoshop, I'm going to go ahead and save it, and I'm going to close it. You don't need Photoshop right now. So the next thing I want to do is I want to open up my web browser, and we're going to go to a site called Texture Haven. We'll try Texture Haven first, but I think we're actually going to, you know what, we're not going to do that. We're going to go to textures.com. Texture Haven's got a lot of good textures on it, but they didn't have a lot for materials, so I'm not going to waste your time with that right now because this is already becoming a long video. But if we go to textures.com, you're going to have to set yourself up with an account, and you get 15 free points a day. They call them credits. So you get 15 a day to download some free stuff, some stuff in here. And it's not as high resolution sometimes, but for this project, this will be fine. And we can go in here and we can take a look at all the different stuff they have. But let's do a search for, we'll do metal. And right here is an aluminum pipe expanded, but we don't want that texturing on it. In fact, why don't we just go ahead and search aluminum. Aluminum. And our additional search, there we go. And I think something like one of these brushed aluminums would probably work pretty well. This kind of matches the way the can looks a little bit. So I think that might be better. And it's a PBR. Let's see what we get, if there's any free stuff here that we can download from that. And this is one I have purchased in the past, but I'm going to go ahead and download it again so that basically you can see the process. So you'll have a credit here. It says 1 credit. I'm going to go ahead, and what I want to do is I want to download each one of these, okay? And I'm going to do it at the 1024. Let me hit cancel on that. So I'm going to do it at the higher resolution since it seems to let me do that. Now you could also download the PBR itself, which is this up here, but you have to have a lot more credits for that. And you only have a max of 15 for the free a day. So I'm going to go ahead and download this, and it's going to ask me where I want to download. I'm going to save my file. I'm going to download each one of these. And we want all 4 of these because we're going to set up our own material. All right, so now I've got them all downloaded. I'm going to open this folder up. Okay. And I'm going to open up my source images folder here. I'm going to create a new folder in here. And I'm going to just call this textures, something like metal or something like that. All right, and then open that up. I'm going to click and drag those 4 materials I just downloaded into here. And now I have them inside of my folder, inside of my project. So what I want to do is, again with my UVs, I'm going to turn this image off right now so I can kind of see what I'm doing. I only want this outer circle right here, so I'm going to go to UV shell. I'm going to select the outer circle and hold shift. And actually probably be easier if I did it this way instead. Okay, let's do this and then just kind of touch that outer circle. Marquee, select everything I want. I also want these down here. So hold my shift, do a marquee, select of all that. And that should be everything that needs to get this new material. Back here, I'm going to go ahead and right click and hold, and I'm going to assign a new material. It's going to be another Arnold. It's going to be my AI standard surface. And again, this one actually popped up for me, so that's great. I'm going to go ahead and highlight that. We're going to call this M underscore, and this will be can metal. Do the same thing. Control C, copy it and paste it on my output. All right, and then here for color, we haven't created the material yet, so let's go ahead and do that real quick. We're going to go up here to our hypershader. And our hypershader is going to look like this. We want to, I'm going to go ahead and expand it all the way so we see what we're doing. We want this one right here. So by hovering over it and using your middle mouse button, you click on it and hold it and drag it down into this area here. And this is the material without anything assigned to it. Now, if we take a look at that folder for our textures, we'll see that we have these. Well, okay, let's not do that. Trying to expand it here. Be nice. There we go. All right, so when we take a look at it, we have one called albedo, a metallic, a normal, and a roughness. And actually, we are going to use all 4 of these. Sometimes we have maps in here that we're not going to use, but we're going to use all 4 of these for this. So that's great. So what we want to do is back over here under Arnold, we're going to select texture. Let me see here, under Arnold. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Back over here on the left-hand side, we're going to select 2D textures. That makes a lot more sense. And we want to click File, okay? And we're going to put 4 of these in here. Those 3 right there. And then this 4th one, I'm going to back off just a little bit right here. All right? Now, the next thing we want is under Arnold, I think it's under Utilities. Yes, under Utility, right, nope, that's not it. Yeah, right underneath, see where this little purple dot is? If you scroll down, you see this little purple dot. There's one right underneath it. That's the AI motion vector. The one right underneath it is the AI normal map. We want that one. We're going to click that, and we're going to drag that over here. And this out color is going to go into that input, and this out value is going to go right in here into the normal camera. And we'll apply that here in a second. So let's start at the top. This top one is going to be our out color, and it's going to go into our base color right there. And with this selected, over here on the right hand side there's a folder. It's going to bring it up and it's going to say, okay, which one do you want? And of course the one we want to do is we're going to go into our textures that we created that folder for, and we want the one that's in albedo. Sometimes it's called albedo, sometimes it's called color. We're going to select that one, and that's going to be our basic color for our material. Now this next one is going to be our metalness, and this is going to be an out alpha, so we're going to go from the out alpha into metalness, and then over here on the right hand side, we need to select this file right here. Over here on the right hand side, we're going to go to this folder. Again, we're going to go back into here. We want the one that says metallic. We're going to open that up, and this is going to be, we're going to ignore these rules right here. We're going to change it from sRGB to raw, and we're going to make alpha luminous. Okay. This next one is our roughness. It is also an out alpha, and it's going to go into our specular roughness right here. With that selected, we're going to go in. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to select our roughness. Again, it's going to, first we're going to ignore these rules because we'll get an error if we don't. We're going to do raw, and alpha is luminous. And then last but not least, down here, we're going to select file right here. We're going to, again, first we're going to select our normal. Go click on the file folder, select normal. And it should be kind of a purplish color. And we're going to ignore the rules, change this to raw, and alpha is luminous. Now with all that done, I'm going to pull this down a little bit, and what we want to do is, even though we've assigned, let me see, we did assign that material, we want to go ahead and I should actually already have taken it now I think about it, because we created it from there. I was going to reassign it, but it should already be assigned. So let's go ahead and click off of here. We're going to go to object mode, click out here, and yeah, you can see that it's kind of turned everything black. It doesn't look aluminum at all. And that's because it won't pop up that way until we get into rendering this. So let's go ahead and save it and take a look to see where we're at with that. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to do a globe. So from here in our hyper shader, what I want to do is I'm going to go in, I'm going to create, go down to Arnold Light. And I want, oops, that's not what I wanted. That was an accident for sure. So let's go ahead, and I don't think I can undo that. Yes, I can. All right. So let's go ahead and go back to create Arnold Light, down to AI Skydome, and we're going to create a Skydome. I'm going to select this. Let's see here. With the Skydome selected, we're going to just leave that there for a second. We are going to go to another site now, real quick, and it is it's a HDRI haven.com. There we are. All right, and what we want to do is we want to see the HDRI, so right up here, click on that. And we're going to pick something that we can put the can in. And I'm just going to pick maybe this Christmas photo studio, which is kind of weird for a can. Maybe a decor shop. How about that? I'm going to select this right here. And I'm just going to go ahead and download the 2K because it's kind of what we're working with for our textures anyway. We could go higher if you wanted. I'm just going to download that real quick. I'm going to save the file, say OK. Do the same thing, go to my folder, minimize this, go into my project, my source images, and I'm going to click and drag and drop that HDRI into here. Now with the Skydome selected back here in my UVs for color, I'm going to go ahead and select my file, and that's going to be that HDRI I just downloaded. Say open. Now my can is kind of sitting out there, just kind of floating. So let's go ahead and just throw something underneath it real quick. We're going to do a plane. Something for it to kind of sit on. Looks like a table maybe. And we can either move the can or the plane, it doesn't matter. Something like that. All right, save everything. And let's go ahead and go to Arnold, the Arnold tab right there, hit play. And when we do that, we should end up with our can. And we may need to play around with the smoothness a little bit for the metallic surface. And we can also change our render settings to kind of play around and clean this up because this image is really grainy. Let's see, let's zoom in a little bit. Yeah, it looks very plain down around the edges here, kind of not as shiny as it should be. Okay, so down here with our specular roughness selected, what we can do is we can play around with the alpha gain. It's defaulted at 1. It should be defaulted at 1. But if you push it down to the left, you'll see that it starts to make your surface area much more shiny. So you can kind of play around with that until you get the look you're looking for. And you can see that right here at the top of the can. We're getting that kind of aluminum effect with the surface of the can. We can kind of play around with it to try to get it to match the texture of the top. So we get it good enough, close enough. It might be a little too shiny right there. You can kind of play around with some of the other settings as well. There's an alpha offset underneath that. There we go. It's a little closer, maybe a little bit too dull. So I'm just playing around with these two settings right down here. Alpha gain, alpha offset on my roughness right here. Again, it should be hooked into specular roughness. Alright, and if you're looking at the can, you're probably wondering, well, why doesn't the can on the bottom get shiny? And that's because it's reflecting the surface of the table, and right now the table is kind of gray. So let's fix that a little bit. Let's just go ahead and assign a new material to that. And another Arnold surface. And we're just going to go ahead and call this M_table. And it's a little wider. So you can kind of see that it's still reflecting down there. Alright, so okay, that's going to be it for this video. I was hoping to get the nCloth piece done, but it took a lot longer to get to this point. We are ready to start nCloth. That'll be in the next video. It should be no longer than a 20 to 30 minute long video for nCloth. And again, if you missed the very first video, you can catch it on my YouTube channel, Paul Fritz Animation. If you liked this video, please like it and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you next time.